Our focus today is going to be on urban agriculture and backyard farming. Today's webinar, as the first two, is being brought to you by Lumen Minerals and Liquid EFM, which are products of longevity that are for the agricultural community. I'd like to introduce our first speaker for this afternoon. His name is Basil Miller, and he has been with the Department of Agriculture for the past 44 years. Mr. Miller is an agronomist. I hope I pronounced that right. Agronomist by training. And he is the officer in charge of backyard farming, and his role is officer in charge of crops and assistant director.
The backyard garden part that I'm responsible for was started by Larry Cartwright, the Minister of Agriculture at the time, in 2008. And at that time, the initiative was to put together backyard garden kits and teach a program on how to use that kit to start a backyard garden at home. And in that kit came an assortment of components that would comprise of getting you started. What we would put 4 basic vegetable seeds in that kit. We would put some Pro Mix, which is the medium that we use to get your seeds started. We'll give you a tray so you can tray your seeds. We'll also give you a gravitational irrigation system, and we'll give you some liquid fertilizer to get you started. But what we would do, we would show you how each of those components are put together. We don't take it for granted that people know how to tray seeds, because in my experience as an agricultural officer, I have found that if you give farmers seed, sometimes maybe 10% or even less of their seeds will germinate because they plant them too deep. So what we have embarked upon is showing people how to tray seeds at the depth you should tray a seed so you can get a viable germination percentage that is worthy of the seeds. Because any company that sells you seeds will sell you seeds that are viable. Because if they have the temerity to put their name on the label, what they would do, they would make sure their seeds reach the international standard of either 80, 85 to 100% germination rate. But farmers usually do not like to sow seeds because they get a poor rate of germination because they don't know what they're doing. And so we don't take it for granted that anybody know how to trade seeds, or even anybody know how to procure seeds after you bought yourself some seeds. You've used some of it. What do you do with the rest? Most people, I find, take the seeds and put them in their cupboard or under room temperature. That is one of the biggest mistakes you can make. Because if you take some seeds and put it under room temperature, with our high humidity and high collection of water in the air, seeds normally sweat, they decompose and they die very quickly. But you can put seeds in an envelope or a Ziploc bag and put it in the fridge. It will last 3 to 5 years. So if you have some seeds that are out of season, that doesn't mean that those seeds are no good. Those seeds can be preserved until the season comes around again, and then you can plant them. So we don't take that for granted. The other thing we don't take for granted is people understand what soil is. Because one of the things that I have experienced over the years as an agronomist is that when you ask people about soil, they think you're talking about Pro Mix, you're talking about cow manure, you're talking about manures. Soil is relatively 3 components: sand, silt, and clay. And you can easily distinguish that by taking a handful of what we would call dirt, which is not dirt, it is soil, and putting it in a transparent glass or a jar, and just drop it in the glass full of water and watch it settle. And you could come back within 24 hours or 48 hours and find out that that soil will separate itself into 3 components. Sand will float to the bottom first. On top of that will be silt, and on top of the silt will be clay. And then you can tell the composition of your soil. So we show people what soil is, and when you go to buy some soil, don't let people sell you gravel, rock, or even what you would call seeds that are weed seeds in the soil. Ask them if the soil is treated, ask them if the soil is sifted. And treatment simply means that the soil was put out into the sun and spread out to kill most of the seeds that are in the soil. And sifted means that it must pass through a sieve wire and only allow sand, silt, and clay to pass through gravel, rock, and boulders are pushed to the side. So make sure you get some sifted soil. It's one of the things that we preach. The other thing is we have developed an irrigation system that is a drip system that is used by gravitational drip. What we were famous for in the Bahamas many years ago was catchment exercises on how to catch water. We have all this rain and most of it goes to waste. And so in our far-flung family islands that are in the southeastern part of the Bahamas that have relatively small pockets of water in this aquifer, we knew that back in the day, people used to use catchment exercise to catch rainwater. That is not a thing anymore. People now are relying on reverse osmosis or desalination or other processing methods, whereas catching water is a very conservative and a very measured and a very costless thing to do. So we try to get people to understand that if you catch water in any collection bin, it could be a drum or it could be something that you create that is high off the ground, you can feed it to the plants through gravity. So we have developed a gravitational system where we use a 55-gallon drum, or it can be a 5-gallon bucket. And we will connect to it spaghetti tubings, hard line and drip line, and that will get you water directly to each plant root system. And so one of the things we teach people about is why plants need water and why do they need water at certain intervals. And what that really means is that plants need water at certain stages of its growth and development. One of the things I found out through my experience in working in the plant and soil combination is that if you don't have water at a specific time of a plant growth and development, the plant will show you some physical symptoms, like pre-harvest fruit drop of fruits, like dropping of flowers, the leaves curling, or you start having chlorotic conditions in the plant. So basically what we would do is we would compose a drip system that you can give your plants water at the base of its root system and not wet the plant. Because to think of it now, if you live in the Bahamas and the temperature is anywhere between 90 and 90 plus, and you go out there and you water the plant with a sprinkler or a hose, then the sun comes up and hit that plant with all of its heat intensity, and there is water on the leaves. You could fry that water on the leaf and injure that plant, but that plant getting scalded or burnt. And because plants get scalded and burned and get a physical a physical wound, that will be an entry for disease. So, we're looking for things like that. And we try to get people to water plants via drip, which is the most efficient and effective way to water plants and conserve water. So these are some of the things we do. But the Backyard Garden program was established in 2008, and we did more than 6,000 places throughout the Family Islands. I went all over the Bahamas and relatively found that a lot of farmers are not farming anymore, especially in the Family Islands, because the age of the farmers now is, you would say, 69 plus. And so you would find either little children and older people who are in the field, and most of the young people are in New Providence. And when we started that initiative, we got a lot of takers. And that was predicated when 9/11 hit us, and we saw how dangerous it was with our food security when 9/11 hit the Bahamas, and the planes stopped coming and the transportation stopped moving. And we found out that in our warehouses and in our food stores, we had enough food to last for 2 weeks. And so when you ask the average child in school, where does food come from? They tell you the food store. And that's what they know. And even when they look at farming as it is done in the Family Islands, the slash and burn and the subsistence farming is not an attractive exercise. But what we are trying to get people involved in understanding that farming is a major science, it's an advanced science, and it's evolving all the time. And technology in farming now can actually cause them to produce more in small spaces. Hence, a backyard garden is a place where you can actually cut out an area in your yard 14 by 8, and you can grow enough food in that small space to sustain your household for a good period of time. And crop rotation is also a part of that, and intercropping is also a part of that. So we have many ways of showing people what they need to do. And now that we are struck with COVID-19, we come back to it again. And I hope we sustain it this time and not play, because this is no time for playing, and we have to sustain this thing. We have to get the children involved, we have to get the young people involved, as well as the parents involved. And everybody needs to start growing something in their yard. One of the things that we try to let them know is that you don't need to have a yard in order to be a backyard garden. You can actually farm in pots, you can farm in pallets, you can farm in tubs, you can use many means. You can actually farm vertical growing. So there's many ways that you can actually try to grow something at home. And the research has shown over the years that a food that is grown closer to you is always healthier and more wholesome than food that is grown at a far distance. Because you don't know what to put in that food, to preserve that food in there, in order to get that food from where it was grown to us in the Bahamas.
Before I go to the next speaker, remember I said that this webinar is being sponsored by Bloom & Minerals and Liquid EFM, which are products that are produced by Youngevity for the agriculture community. Youngevity is a company that specializes in organic minerals for agriculture, as well as organic supplements or plant-based nutrition for humans, to help us to achieve optimum health through nutrition. And here is a brief look at Bloom & Minerals and Liquid EFM and how they can benefit you as a farmer.
Okay, the agricultural minerals. We have the blooming minerals, comes in small containers. We have 2.5, 4.5 pound containers or 40-pound bags. And then we also have the liquid blooming minerals. You know, the blooming minerals comes in this granular stuff that you had a chance to look at. It comes in 40-pound bags. It also comes in pallet sizes, 40 bags to a pallet, and semi-truckloads, 24 pallets to a semi-truckload. The liquid EFM consists of fulvic minerals, and we add an enzyme into this mineral. Notice the difference in color. This is a little bit darker than this right here. That's because we'll import an enzyme from Japan, and the minerals and enzymes stimulate the plant's ability for more nutrient uptake. It also completes the law of minimums in that plant. So we do what we call a foliar application. I'll explain how that works in a minute. And that comes in 55-gallon barrels, by the way. That's the smallest quantity we have at this point in time, is 55-gallon barrels. Now, the blooming minerals is a granular. It's OMRI listed. This is organic certified. 40-pound bag, covers 3,300 square feet. And I recommend you apply that twice a year to your garden. And if you have a greenhouse, when you mix up your potting soil before you pot your plants, put 1 tablespoon per gallon of potting soil. Now this builds up the soil. Okay? This is too expensive for large commercial farming. And we'll use the liquid EFM for large commercial farming.
But I want to move on to my next guest speaker. She is Salima Harber, who is one of the proprietors of Field to Fork. In 2012, Dr. Harber, and I hope I pronounced your last name right, Salima, forgive me if I'm not, she established her own small organic farm called Field to Fork Community Farm, and she is committed to using sustainable and innovative production practices that protect the environment and consumer health. The farm produces a variety of vegetables on 2 acres of land that are sold at the weekly farmers market and numerous restaurants and hotels in the Western District of New Providence.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be here and share with you some of our production practices. During this time of the pandemic, everybody, there's an amazing interest and surge in people wanting to be more self-sufficient and grow their own food. So hence this massive gathering here of 83 participants, numerous Facebook groups with people growing in their backyards. Just before I stopped going to the farmer's market, everybody coming by asking for seedlings. So I applaud all of you for your interest, and let's talk a little bit about the benefits of growing your own food, which some of you will learn for the first time, and others of you have known for many years. So it's more than just growing to make sure that you could feed yourself. if in the event that shortages are experienced here on the island. But it's highly important that we eat the best and the freshest, most nutritious food. And the only way you could get the most nutritious food is if you grow it yourself. You consume it as soon as early as you can post-harvest. Being a country highly dependent on imported food, we really don't get the full benefit of eating fruits and vegetables being imported, because the moment you harvest the plant, remove a fruit from the tree, pick it from the ground, it starts to deteriorate. Its nutrient profile starts to diminish, and you're actually not getting the full benefit of all the health benefits in the food. Also, to taste. Many of the compounds, the phytonutrients in plants confer not only health benefits, but good taste. And if you are eating something that was picked a week, 2 weeks ago, you are not enjoying your food as much as you can. So I encourage you to grow your food, if only for the reason of improving your nutrition and bringing food that's tastier to your table. So now that we're going into the summer, traditionally growing in the Bahamas, farming in the Bahamas is the bulk of the production happens during the winter. The temperatures are milder, the night temperatures are milder, and it's just a lot more comfortable for the plants. Now that we're going into the summer, and many of us are wanting to grow in our backyards, we have a lot of things that we need to consider that you wouldn't necessarily have to consider during the winter months. The first thing is location of your garden. The summer sun is very intense, and most of the heat that we experience is from being in direct sun. So I'd like for you to test this out, try this out. You go at the end of this webinar, you go outside, you stand in full sun, and just notice how warm it feels. And then go in shade and notice how much different that is. Now imagine a plant that is exposed to direct sun that cannot move. The plant's leaf temperature is actually going to be a lot higher than we would experience. So you need to make sure that you find a location in your yard that is on the east side of a building or the east side of a tree, a location that can receive morning sun, but in the heat of the afternoon, it's shaded. So that's the first important thing, location. Make sure it's east facing. If you cannot find a location that is protected from the afternoon sun, then you will need to implement shading to protect your plants so they are not stressed by the sun. The next thing is the location. Make sure you are close to a spigot, a water faucet, someplace where you would be able to connect a hose or fill a watering can so that you could easily carry water to your plants and water them regularly, or water them as needed. We're also going into the rainy season, so it's important that you pay attention to the water content of the soil. I'm going to move through quickly because time is running and I want to get to a lot of practical points that could help you establish your garden quickly. The next thing Basil talked about, soil. And he also touched on growing method. Are you going to grow in containers or in raised beds? Here in the Bahamas, that's one strike we have against us in terms of growing. Our soils are very thin and in many places non-existent. So we have to grow in raised beds, which you would have to find some means of bordering, of making a border, whether it's concrete bricks or pallet wood or rocks that you could make in a shape and backfill with soil. Or you could grow in containers. I suggest starting with plant pots that are no smaller, absolutely no smaller than 3 gallons. 3 gallons, if possible, I would say go with a 5-gallon pot or larger. But definitely at the bare minimum for certain plants, 3 gallons. So once you've decided which method, raised bed versus container gardening, the medium in which you are going to grow your plants is very important that you pay attention to its components. Basil talked about using ProMix. ProMix for planting your seeds is excellent. But when you're going to grow a full-on plant, you can add some of that with our native topsoil. It would also need to be amended with organic matter. And organic matter is anything that was once alive and now has been composted. So you can use leaves from your yard, grass clippings. And organic matter is really important because it helps to retain water in the soil. It also provides food for the microorganisms, which are very necessary in order to feed your plants fully. And also nutrient retention. Without organic matter in your soil, your soil fertility levels cannot be optimum. So in terms of fertility, composted manure, there's a commercial product, Black Cow composted manure. You will hear more about the products offered by Youngevity, all of the humic acids and the organic acids and minerals, very important. We have a free resource washing up on our beaches every day, seaweed. Seaweed is excellent source of organic matter and fertility. It needs to be rinsed thoroughly. And if you could compost it, even better. The seaweed would contain some of the micronutrients that are impossible, that cannot be found in our calcareous soils, which are primarily limestone. Now, we talked about soil. You need to amend it with organic matter, be it compost, composted manure for fertility, and organic matter, seaweed. Just make sure your soil is rich. The next thing we want to talk about is what to grow. Now, as I said, in the winter, the production, main production here in the Bahamas in the winter, we can grow just about anything. You can grow tomatoes and peppers and eggplant and lettuces and cabbages and broccoli, and the list goes on and on. But now that we are in the summer, despite the fact that, you know, it's warm, we got lots of beautiful sun, but our nighttime temperatures are not low enough to allow successful production of harvestable yields for a number of crops. So in my last 2 minutes, I'm going to give you this list really quickly. And I can also add it again during the question and answer period. For greens, it's very important to eat your greens. Greens are one of the key components of a healthy diet to prevent any number of the non-communicable diseases that we have right now. However, cabbage, kale, you know, lettuce, those kind of greens will struggle in our summer. So let's look at some of the tropical crops that we can grow for leafy greens. Callaloo. Bahamians are gonna have to learn how to eat callaloo. Purslane, this weed, I don't know how well you can see it. This is a weed, you will be pulling this up, but this is one of the most nutritious plants in the world. It's called purslane. It is the plant source with the highest level of omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3 fatty acids are essential acids that reduce inflammation in our bodies, and it's very important that we consume as much of this as possible. If you are buying flax seeds, chia seeds, this is even higher in omega-3s than those. Other leafy greens, Malabar spinach, or we call the native spinach, the vining spinach with the purple berries. Dasheen leaves, cassava leaves are edible. You have to cook it thoroughly, properly, do your research on that. Sweet potato leaves are edible. In terms of root crops, tropical root crops do way better here in the summer. So sweet potatoes, cassava, dasheen, eddos. Now, when you look at the fruiting crops, you can, anything in the cucumber family, which is watermelons, other melons, cantaloupes, squashes, cucumbers, some of the pigeon peas, some of the beans, yard-long beans would do well. Other crops that grow well in the summer, eggplant and okra. So these are variety is limited, but certainly there's still quite a bit of food that we can grow during the summertime to have great meals. So thank you, and I will answer questions at the end with the other speakers, and then we could talk more about the maintenance of your garden, some of the other things you need to do to make sure you have success.
Thank you so much, Salima. Great information there.
Okay, so what are some of the results we're getting? Here's an actual picture. This is actually Richard Lambright from Shipshewana, Indiana. He did this little experiment for me. 3 weeks, he planted soybeans and corn. He took organic soil and put this in a big pot, 2 different pots. He had 1 pot with soybeans and corn without the liquid EFM. And 3 weeks later, he dug up the roots and he suspended them on a little line. This is the root mass of this soybean without liquid EFM. This is the root mass of the soybean with liquid EFM. Corn without liquid EFM and with liquid EFM. Now, how big is that root mass? That's a pretty impressive root mass, isn't it? Look at this window here. If you know anything about construction, this window here is probably about 22 to 24 inches right there. A good reference how big that plant is. That's just in 3 weeks. All he did was soak the seeds in a ratio of liquid EFM and planted them.
Gerard Darville is a young entrepreneur that started over 7 businesses in the Bahamas and the United States of America. He's also a youth development coach, and he's now focused on philanthropy. He started a pilot project dedicated to showing youth the positive benefits of agriculture in his community, the Pinewood Community Garden. And there he took advantage of being a community leader and became the youth officer of the Progressive Young Liberals. But through his community garden, what he does is he grows food in the community and then distributes healthy food that was grown right there in Pinewood to the residents of that community. And so Gerard will, I'm sure, tell you a lot more about what gave him the passion to do this and the kind of response that he's getting from youth in particular, because as we are all well aware, there is this misconception in many, among many young people that but only old men farm. And so what he's been aiming to do is to show our young people that there is definitely a future in farming for you.
Thank you for having me. Good day, Salima. How you doing? Basil, everything's good? Yeah, in Pinewood, you know, non-communicable diseases was a major problem inside our area. And we sit back and we were thinking, how could we be able to fix this? I joined Longevity with Deja about 2 years ago. And I said, you know, I'm on this healthy track. How could I be able to impact more? So I said, all right, let's start a garden. We had an area inside the community which was suffering from environmental problems, persons dumping and stuff like that. So we said, hey, look here, let's clean it up. Let's turn it into a community farm. All right. So I just wanted to talk to you guys today about some ways for the community to become more involved in the urban and backyard farming concept. Because some of the major problems that we have inside the Bahamas is that we don't have good soil. Persons can't say, oh, I using the light. Yeah. All right. So persons don't have good soil. So we can have, whereas certain houses inside the community, not everyone needs to farm. Certain persons could get straight into composting, and composting could become a business, whereas you go in the neighborhood, you tell persons, hey, look here, all of your green trash, all of that, all right, you bring it out on a certain day, I would come and I would collect it. Every household that donates their green trash to you, you give them a certain coupon, right? At the end of 6 months, all of that green trash and stuff which you collect, and that break down, and that would make nutrient-rich soil, which you could then come back and give back to the community, or probably be able to sell. That is a good way to be able to create natural soil inside the community. Also, we were looking at a no-waste solutions. You have persons that do fishing inside your communities. The fish guts, they're another natural good way to make compost tea. which you could be able to use inside your drip systems and in your isotopes or in your 55-gallon drums. That could be able to bring natural minerals to all of your plants inside your system through the drip tape format. And this is ways that we could limit what all goes back into the landfill. We all try to adhere with climate change mechanisms, and we don't want extra stuff going into the landfill, especially stuff that we could reuse. When it comes down to persons going back and collecting water, we need to start incentivizing it. Even if we are able to, as a community, come together and say, hey, look here, if water and sewage is charging you 5 cents a gallon, if we were able to give everybody isotopes and set it up in a way whereas the water that comes off of their drain comes into these isotopes and we pay you 3 cents a gallon just for collecting water for us, we incentivize reusable and climate-friendly ventures, whereas persons are paid and plants could be watered at a lower cost, because if water and sewage is charging you one fee, you're paying a smaller fee, and you're also helping out the other brother man, sister lady to be involved in backyard farming. And once we know with business, the more persons that are actually involved in the why your business is running, the more persons that would support you. So if you have the entire community invested in what you're doing, the community would appreciate what it is. And then you would have, when you bring your produce to market, persons would understand why we are supporting this person versus going to a supermarket or going and purchasing fruits where we don't know where they came from. Another thing about stuff where we don't know where they came from in the community, this has very much to do with backyard farming. We need to hold environmental health accountable, because even though they're combating mosquitoes, what most urban and backyard farmers don't realize is when environmental health comes around and sprays with their pesticides to kill mosquitoes in the nighttime while you're asleep, and these pesticides go on your fruits and your vegetables, and you don't know, and you go in the morning and you eat them, right? You are actually eating the same chemicals that they're using to kill the mosquitoes. So as in part of backyard farming, we also have to be deeper into what is going on in our community, because it's one thing, yes, you're trying to grow food, you're trying to be healthy, but then if somebody comes and sprays chemicals on your stuff, what you're trying to eat healthy from, it totally defeats the purpose of that. And what longevity has shown me is there's another industry that could be made from backyard farming if we were to be able to take our medicinal herbs. We have things like cerasee, hornbush, we have aloe vera, we have noonie, soursop, and we would to do research, have a research study, and be able to test these different medicinal herbs so that we could have a company like Longevity where we could have products to provide to Longevity. I heard in one of the commercials, they said that they got minerals from Japan. But what about the Bahamas? We have to, in this pandemic, find new and creative ways to incentivize farming and to incentivize monies injected into agriculture. Because if we could be able to come up with a prescribed rate of how much cerasee to drink to get rid of the flu, then we now hit a gold mine. Because right now, all of us do it the way of our ancestors. We drink cerasee until our ancient ancestors tell us that's enough, or we get diarrhea, and then we stop. But nobody has a prescribed method to say 2 ounces of cerasee twice a day for a week and you'll be good. But these are things that we need to be able to get into to be able to help foster new industries inside the Bahamas and also encourage more persons to get into backyard farming. because in a small 10 by 10, if you were to just say you want to grow life leaf and cerasee, you could be able to make yourself quite a bit of dollars if you're using it for medicinal research. Also, mulching. Mulching is another good opportunity, and it's good when you come inside the community, you take a community aspect of it. One person doesn't have to do everything. We could work together in a community, and you could grow tomatoes, your neighbor could grow potatoes, the next neighbor could grow sweet peppers, the next neighbor could be able to be making the compost for you, and so on and so forth. And that's where, as a unit, the neighborhood and you would never go hungry, because we could go back to the same barter system. And sometimes some people know how to deal with certain plants better. And again, when it comes down to being in touch with what's going on, buying fertilizer is very expensive, and this is one of the hardest things for backyard and urban farmers to recover from, being able and having to invest in fertilizing and keeping your soil nutritious. Presently, the government has just brought in 72,000 pounds of fertilizer from the government of Morocco. They gifted that to them. But what I'm saying is that why do we need to get fertilizer gifted to us? When I read a story on Commonwealth Brewery, Commonwealth Brewery, they were almost to the point of collapse with Kalik, until they realized that the only way they can make it is if they was to recycle the bottles. Hence, they created an industry in the Bahamas with bottle recycling, and Kalik and Commonwealth Brewery stayed afloat, stayed alive. So what I'm saying is the amount of trash we collect, the amount of cesspit tanks we drain, the farming industry has to work as an ecosystem. Whereas the only way your farm can stay alive is if you have fertilizers to give to it. That's why when most persons farm, they farm with pigs, goats, sheep, chickens, and they can use that same fertilizer to put on their farm. But in the urban areas, we don't have that privilege, because they say the diseases and stuff. So we need to kind of advocate, whereas it could be a fertilization manufacturing plant, whereas we could take our stuff and be able to take care of us who's farming, and so the cost could be less on all of us.
Okay, Rodney's Ranch, strawberries. Notice how brilliant and big these strawberries are, nice and juicy, and very little sign of hollowness, deeper color in the center. Notice those carrots. Here's some spinach and broccoli. I mean, now, according to Rodney's accountant, after he started using the minerals through his irrigation system, his net profits increased 45% within 6 months after using the minerals. A substantial increase in yield. Now, here is more vegetables here. And notice, I want you to look at something real close here. Notice how brilliant and bright those beets are. When I bought the vegetables in Walmart today, I found some beets there, but notice, I want you to look at this. See the root system? Very, very, very little root system right there. You see that? This has even less. It's broken off. But as you can see here, this represents very little root system. Now, you know, it looks nice and clean, but notice the difference in color of that. It's not as brilliant. If I had a comparison side by side, it would be more of a contrast. But also notice this is more dry. It doesn't look as fresh as those are. Notice how thick those roots are, how deep those roots are. Those beets will taste a lot better than this right here. I guarantee they will. Good morning. We're here at Southern California, the North County San Diego Vista Farmers Market, and I have Rodney's Ranch. Rodney, tell me about your produce stand here. Why do people come and buy from you?
It's the flavor and the quality of it, how it looks.
The tomatoes are out of this world. They're great.
When you say out of this world, I mean big, small, I mean...
Flavorful. The flavor is excellent.
So the flavor, can you kind of describe what the difference is in a good tasting tomato? I mean, don't all tomatoes taste the same?
No, absolutely not. They are sweet, and they just taste like tomatoes ought to taste.
because the longer it takes to get from the farms where they pick to the store at the farmer's market is the most freshest, and that's why I get all my organic veggies from here.
The freshness, the quality, the sweetness of the berries.
All week I'll wait. I'm going to the farmer's market to get carrots on Saturday from that one booth.
From that one booth.
Yeah.
Do you know why? What Rodney's doing? His carrots are sweeter.
No, I have no idea. I just know they taste good.
Would you like to know why?
Sure.
You would?
Yeah.
Always buy like most of my vegetables here. It's fresh, organic, nice people, and have nothing but good stuff to say.
What are your favorite vegetables that you buy here?
Always the kale, always the carrots, and then whatever's in season. So whatever they're offering, I usually get.
And everything's really fresh and green is what I like about what I've noticed about this booth.
So you would see that this booth is, of all the ones you shopped around, you're looking for the freshness and the greenness and just the brilliant colors.
Yes, vibrant and freshness is pretty important to me because you can really buy anything, but it's hard to always find that sometimes, you know what I mean?
Many different selections of vegetables. Everybody comes that I've interviewed so far has said they like the flavor of his fruits and vegetables. Now, Rodney, what is it that makes your fruits and vegetables, in your opinion, taste so much better, so much sweeter?
It has to do with the blooming minerals. It made a lot of difference when I started growing the blooming minerals.
All right. So before we go ahead and open the floor for questions, just to bring you up to speed on the whole philosophy of longevity. Longevity was founded by Dr. Joel Wallach in 1997. And to give you a bit of his background, he grew up on a farm. And as he tells his life story, he explains that as farmers, and those of you on here who maybe perhaps farm livestock, as farmers, you have to figure out a way to keep your animals healthy because farmers generally don't buy medical insurance for their animals. And so what they decided to do was they created this concoction of vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, amino acids, and they made them into pellets and they fed them to their animals. And they found that not only were the animals reversing illness, but it was also extending their lives. The animals were healthier, longer. Now, Dr. Wallach grew up with a very bad twitch on his eye, his upper eyelid. And his parents took him from doctor to doctor to doctor, and none of the doctors could figure out what was causing the twitch. So they just said he's disabled, and that was the end of that. And so one day at dinner, he says to his dad, well, if this mineral and vitamin thing is working for our animals, why aren't we using it on us? Typical parent, his parents tell him, boy, eat your piece and shut up. He didn't take him seriously at all. But as a kid, I think he was about, anyway, doesn't matter how old he was, he figured out, okay, I'm going to start eating these pellets myself to see if this will help me. So he started eating the pellets that they had made for the farm animals. Within 2 weeks, the twitch in his eye was gone. So he figured out at a very early age that the key to reversing illness was nutrition. Long story short, he went on to study agricultural industries. He became a doctor of medicine, both in terms of veterinary. He became a veterinarian as well as he is a naturopathic doctor. He's performed thousands of autopsies on humans and animals. And throughout his more than 40 years of research, he's discovered that every human being needs 90 essential minerals, amino acids, essential fatty acids, vitamins every single day for optimum health. And if you give your body the raw materials it needs, it will reverse illness if it's a chronic illness in many instances, or it will just keep you healthy. And so his program is called 90 for Life. And what it does is it teaches us crusaders how to show people how they can reverse illness, heal themselves just by giving their body what it needs. The problem is, though, because of modern day farming techniques, much of the food that we're eating today does not have the same nutritional value as that of what our grandparents ate. The soils have been depleted. The advent of electricity changed farming techniques altogether. And so the food that they grew back then was much more mineral rich than the food that than generally the food that we are getting now. So it's not enough even just to go to the store and buy organic food, because even though the food may not have pesticides or chemicals, it still may not have the nutritional density that you need, that your body needs in order to thrive. And so this is why the longevity minerals are available as a supplement form for humans, and that is all plant-based nutrition. But in addition to that, longevity came up with the idea to produce the product specifically for the agricultural community, so that the food that you grow is also mineral dense, very rich in minerals. And as you would have seen in the last video, the yield is so much greater. And so I'm going to open the floor now for questions. One of the questions that I have, and someone alluded to it a little earlier, and I think it was a message here. Yes, here it is. It says, in the chat, it says, we need assistance with the health department to help with rodents that are increasingly growing in different residential areas due to derelict vehicles, tires, garbage, etc. Are these rodents, as these rodents eat the plants, vegetables, and composition, that makes it difficult for backyard farmers? Even if you're not in an area where there are abandoned vehicles or whatever, rodents is a real problem. I mean, I live in a middle class income resident area, and there are no abandoned vehicles or anything like that in this area, but we have a rat problem. And my concern is, I would love to be growing tomatoes and all that kind of stuff, but I don't want to be on it for them to eat before I can get to it. So what do you do, Ms. Miller? I don't know if in your department y'all address this rodent issue at all, or if you work with the department that does. But rodents is a real problem. So how do you recommend backyard farmers combat that problem?
Well, basically, rodents is an issue all over this island because of our poor disposal system. And what I normally tell folks, if they can use hormonal rat baits around their garbage, the rodents would actually go to that hormonal rat bait because of the way it is constituted, and they would eat that first before they go at any food. And most of the hormonal rat baits you can get from Rent-A-Kill. That little pebble one, that is not effective in my experience. Rats eat it, and then they go drink some water. They get sick, but they're back again. But the large one that look like the Nico soap is very effective. They eat it, and they die. So we have to do a very serious baiting program all over this island, because we have a major rat problem everywhere. I live in a fairly upscale neighborhood also, and my issue is always I have to buy rat bait from my neighbor's yard to keep their rats across the road, because the rats are going up in your cars and eating your wires and doing all sorts of stuff. So they're not just eating your garden, but they're eating the wires in your cars and costing people hundreds of dollars to get their cars running again. So rat bait is the most effective means right now. And that rat bait is purchased from Rent-A-Kill. I'm not advertising for them, I'm telling you the truth.
No, we appreciate the information. It's called hormonal rat bait?
Yeah, it's based on hormones. It attracts them by the need to procreate. The need to feed and the need to procreate is probably the two strongest needs in most animals, and some humans too, but in most animals, the need to procreate and the need to feed is two of the strongest pulling things in an animal. So they would go after a hormonal scented bait, and they would eat it because it arouses the sexual part of them. And so they go after that immediately, and they eat it and die.
Wow, good information. I think I can get me some of that tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
Because it's a real problem, you know.
It's a real problem.
The few things that I've tried to grow in my backyard, and they've been few, because I'm not exactly I don't have the greenest thumb out there. But I have tried to grow a couple of things, and the rats got to it, and I'm like, come on, man. So, that's good information to have. Good information. Okay, if Anybody out there, if you want to ask a question, just go ahead and unmute your microphone and ask the question, okay? Go ahead, somebody, I can hear somebody. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, my folks here. All is well, Michelle?
Yeah, man.
Good. Once again, I got to congratulate you on the show again.
Thanks,
and
man.
Being the facilitator of this particular program, I think we got to find a way in Maine for this to pretty much continue to go on. You're doing an excellent job, and whatever I can do to assist in terms of making this possible, we need to do that so the information can really and truly get out.
Yeah.
I want to also say kudos to the gentleman in Pinewood Gardens, Mr. Dowell.
Yep.
I heard about the program that they were having in that community for quite some time, and it's awesome. And I try to follow little things like that. And Mr. Basil Miller, most respect to this brother. When I started to put together our backyard farming program back in July of '97, shortly after the election, I reached out to Mr. Harold Cole in regard to sisters saying that he was doing the program. He was doing this thing for so long. He has passed on now for about a year now. But if he was alive right now, this would be actually a dream come true for him. All right. I reached out to him and he didn't hesitate either. Mr. Basil Miller, it took me 2 hours to reach this gentleman. Mr. Basil Miller was actually on the road when I went to find who was in charge of the backyard garden program for the Ministry of Agriculture. And he was actually caught up in traffic. And he said, if I'm prepared to wait, he's ready and willing to assist in terms of assisting me with any ideas and suggestions in terms of getting the backyard garden program together. And he did just so. From day one, one thing I could say about Mr. Basil Miller, he's a gentleman of time. If he tell you can be to you at a certain time, he's gonna be there. Last year, as I said, Mr. Harold Cole has passed away, so he didn't get a chance to even come and be a part of the first pop-up market we had in the community of Stapleton Gardens. And I've held 2 pop-up markets thus far. We may probably be the first community to have actually gotten a backyard garden pop-up market started there.
Wow.
What I want to say about Mr. Basil Miller has been with me every step of the way in regard to assisting and making sure things like that did happen. We also launched the first community garden in the community of Stapleton Garden last year in honor of Mr. Harold Cole. And I just also want to say to Mr. Basil Miller, the garden is looking pretty well. I'm really and truly looking forward to adding some raised beds in there and paying tribute and honor to Mr. Harold Cole as well in that regard. But I just want to say thank you very much to Mr. Basil Miller in terms of making things happen. I've also been able to assist Mr. Miller in going into 1 or 2 other communities in terms of trying to get this thing off the ground. All I want to say is that if the power to be, give Mr. Basil Miller the leeway to do what he does best, we definitely will be on the right path and we will definitely get things done. I just want to say congratulations to the brother. And Mr. Dowell, continue to do well in Pinewood.
Hi, good afternoon, Michelle. My name is Crystal Ferguson. I have a question. I'm going to say Selita. I'm sorry. I may not say it right. She's smiling, so she knows I mean her. New backyard farmer person here, and I'm trying to get the soil so that I could, make sure it's ready to actually plant, because I've had some failures. I bought a little pepper seedling, it died. I bought tomato seedlings, it died. And we have a pretty rich backyard. If you could you were telling us about how to prepare the soil, and you were talking about dead leaves and other things that I know about the seaweed, so I'll go get it, rinse it off. And so just give us some little pointers there, please, on preparing your soil, please.
Okay, so there are a number of reasons why your seedlings may have died. Without knowing all of the details and seeing the plants, whether they failed because of nutrient deficiencies or toxicities, or overwatering is a common way to kill seedlings. Another thing is there are lots of living organisms out there that come out at night and just literally just wreak havoc on your plants. It could be cutworms. It could be fungi and bacteria. It's just a whole number of things. So first, I'll review what I said about making sure you have healthy soil. Now, the soils here in the Bahamas are quite sandy, so we need to add a lot of organic matter. Organic matter is pretty much one of the first things you need to look at. And the organic matter helps with water retention and nutrient retention, and availability. So what do I mean by organic matter? I was talking about dead leaves. So as leaves fall from trees, they're brown and dry, add that to your soil. The seaweed I mentioned, make sure it's rinsed well. Some vegetable crops can take the salt in unrinsed seaweed, others can't. So just eliminate any chances of failure and make sure your seaweed is well rinsed. One of the things we always tell people to do to amend their soil and fortify their soil is to buy composted manure. There's one brand that I know is available on it. It's Black Cow composted manure. That's really good for fertility and for increasing the organic matter in your soil. What you can do, composting yourself is also a good practice, but it requires management. You have to have the right balance of fresh or green materials, which would include your kitchen scraps, any vegetables you cut up, any leftover foods, etc., yard waste that are green, with dried materials, be it paper, dried leaves, dried branches, and that has to be managed well. So you would need to do some research on how to make your own compost, turning it regularly, making sure that it is moist, making sure that it gets to the temperature to kill the pathogenic, the disease-causing organisms in your soil. All of that is necessary to manage to produce your own compost. There is a local company, Green Systems. They produce compost as well. So if you don't want to go into the hassle or you don't have the space in your yard to produce your own compost, you could call them up. I'm not sure their means of selling it, if they sell it in retail sizes in bags or by the load, but that's also an option. Compost from Green Systems. And then compost tea, which includes the nutrients from your decomposing kitchen scraps and the microbes. And some of the products that Longevity is offering would definitely supply minerals and microbes that would help produce a good crop. Another thing I need to mention to cover the base of failure, the reason your seedlings did not grow if it's based on insect or disease, there's a website that I think is excellent for the backyard farmer. And it is, I think, produced by a German company, but specifically for people in the tropical regions. Very little resources exist online for growing in warm climates. And this is one, especially in warm climates in areas where people don't have much financial resources, so they can't afford or they don't have access to commercial pest and disease control methods. You can go to this website. It is oisat.org, oisat.org, and it essentially lists recipes that you could make in your own kitchen from ingredients that you already have, like garlic and hot peppers and onions and just a variety of things that you already have in your home to help protect your plants against pathogenic organisms. And it would require I can't recall how good their pictures are to help you identify the issue that your plant is having. But it's listed by the name of the pest, whether it's aphid or whitefly, thrips, spider mite. And then if you could identify what the trouble-causing organism is, you search for that, and then it pulls up a list of recipes that you could make in a blender, in a big bucket. Neem is one of the components to help that you could spray on your plants. But make sure, become very, very, very friendly with that site and know it in and out, because it really will help you have success in identifying pests and diseases and how you could control them without having to shell out a ton of money on chemicals.
The next person in the lineup for a question is Carolee.
I would like to ask the person who talk about the rat paste if this rat paste can work for squirrels as well.
Do we have squirrels here?
The caller may not be located in the Bahamas. We have callers, we have persons on the call who are all over.
I really don't know.
All right. Next up is Cheryl H., who has a question.
In relationships to planting strawberries. If you're planting it from one that you have at home and that's not a sweet fruit, would that deter or determine whether or not, if your plants spring, Mr. Miller, I think you can answer this for me, whether or not this can turn out to be a sour fruit or a sweet fruit, or the seed you planted from would not matter?
To add to her question, does it matter to if the fruit that she is trying to reproduce is organic or GMO? Did that also affect the quality?
I'll start, Basil, and then you could tag on. So the thing with strawberries are very difficult to grow from seed. It's possible, but it's challenging. As a matter of fact, commercial growers never plant their own seeds. They buy the plants or the strawberry crowns from producers, and then they plant them before the growing season and allow the plant to gain a certain amount of size in order for it to have reproducible fruit. Now, strawberries are natural hybrids. Hybrids, that's one thing about this fruit. It's a hybrid that happened spontaneously in nature. So when you plant a seed, you really don't know what you're going to get. You can't be guaranteed that you will have the same fruit that you put in your mouth that you got the seed from. And another thing is sweetness actually depends on a number of factors, one of which is genetics, meaning what its parent plants were like. So as I said, if you get a seed from the fruit, there's no guarantee that you will have the same level of sweetness in the fruit that you ate. But sweetness is also determined by the nutrition that the plant gets. So if you happen to have a really strong, robust plant, it has a big crown, and by crown, I mean the part of the plant where the leaf stalk or the leaf petiole attaches to the base that's in the ground. That's the crown. And it's important for you to have, to get a significant amount of fruit, that crown is healthy, it's big, and it has a lot of stored reserves. So you got to make sure your plant is sufficiently optimally fertilized, and ideally you would source your stock or your seeds, if you choose to grow it from seeds, from a source that can guarantee the quality and the sweetness of the fruit.
Selena, before you go, does it matter if it's GMO, if it's been genetically modified? What kind of, because for a layperson like me, I may not necessarily know that the fruit that I purchased has been genetic. I mean, for me, I buy, me, I buy all my stuff at the farmer's market. But for someone who may not have gotten it, say they went to the food store and they saw beautiful looking strawberries and think that these are, the real deal. how do you know if it's been GMO? And furthermore, will that affect the ability to reproduce and the quality of it, etc.?
So to address this dangerous topic of GMOs, I have to do the research again to see what the current list is. But certainly when I was in university, and I think it's safe to say today, the list of crops that have been genetically modified is not that vast. It's primarily agronomic monoculture grain crops like rice, wheat, corn, soybean, just these crops that are grown in thousands and thousands of acres and tens of thousands of acres. Because, and the primary reason that they would genetically modify it is because the production method is all mechanized, right? So they have massive tractors. They don't have, like on my small farm, I have somebody walking around who's hand weeding. They can't afford that. So they need to be able to spray herbicide or a weed killer over the entire crop to kill the weeds, spray pesticide over the entire crop, because they have tens of thousands of acres to grow. So in order to be able to do that efficiently and still be able to get a good harvest, they genetically modify the crop, the desired plant, to be able to resist these chemicals. So I would venture to say, I would bet my PhD on it, that very few, if not, no garden vegetable. As a matter of fact, with the exception of the tomato, to my knowledge, has been genetically modified. Tomatoes, I know when I was in university, they were talking about, they produced a variety of tomato by using molecular breeding, which is another fancy way of saying genetic modification, using molecular breeding to prevent it from ripening too fast and maintaining the flavor. They call it the flavor saver tomato. So what happens in large scale production, and tomato is one of those like super, those vegetables or fruits in high demand. So they're shipping tons of it across the world, and they need to make sure that it gets to the consumer in a good condition, and that when the consumer eats it, it actually tastes good. So they genetically modified a tomato. I'm not saying that the ones that you go into our local retailers are genetically modified tomatoes. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, of all of the vegetables that you may buy, the tomato is one that I am aware of having been genetically modified. Beyond that, if you want to totally avoid genetically modified foods, avoid highly processed foods. All of the foods in the middle aisles of the grocery store that actually come in a box or in a plastic bag or in a foil bag with writing on it that has to tell you that it's healthy for you, any of those highly processed foods that may contain, or actually probably definitely contain, wheat or corn or soybean, those foods, I could guarantee you, you will be consuming genetically modified foods. Now, part of the problem of us being a nation that imports largely from America, in America, their legislation, processed foods do not have to be labeled to say that they contain genetically modified organisms. I may be wrong, that may have changed recently, but now you would see on some packaging, because they know they don't use it, they say, does not contain genetically modified. But in many cases, they do not have to label that they were using genetically modified foods. I was very surprised to learn, I was in university, and I actually worked in a lab that did molecular breeding, genetic modification. And I was surprised to learn at that time that we as consumers had been consuming genetically modified products since the 80s. or maybe even, you know, the 90s, because they didn't need to label it. And also it was highly processed, so it wasn't like eating the soybeans straight, you know, from the farmer who picked it, but you're eating the modified soybean in the mayonnaise or in the barbecue sauce. So to ensure that you are eating all natural ingredients, just stick to what you grow in your yard, number one, which you could buy from a producer that you could look in the eye and talk to and say, how did you grow this? And then number two, eat on the outskirts of the grocery store. Avoid those things in the middle aisle.
All right, thank you so much, Salima. Okay, next person up for a question is Lisa Green.
Thank you so much. I'm learning a lot. Really appreciate the time. The site that you gave us was oisat.org. Would that be the site that you could also get information on for slugs, to kill snails in the garden, that will give you organic ways to kill slugs? I have a few questions. The next question is about composting. I do my own compost. However, I'm finding it difficult because I need a proper way to do it, and I don't know if there's a way that we sell it here where there's a barrel that we actually can roll. For me, it's actually turning my compost every few days, but it takes months for the items to decompose like that. And how do you know where I can find a 55-gallon drum so I could actually start collecting water?
The 55-gallon drum. The Coca-Cola company on the Milo Butler Highway, almost close to Michael, you can buy a 55-gallon drum from them, or you can buy them from Commonwealth Brewery. That's where you can get a 55-gallon drum from. And as to the safe way to compost, is that when you put your compost in a drum, you would have that drum laying sideways or horizontal. And when you put your compost in it, you turn it every 6 weeks, from my experience. And the stuff to the bottom in 6 weeks, especially if you add some fertilizer to it to speed up the process of decomposition. And you scoop from the bottom every 6 weeks and mix it in your soil or in your garden or in your pots. But if you have if you have a backyard plus you have a composting, they must be two separate areas, because rats and rodents, snails and slugs would hide under those trash, especially after a good downpour of rain. They would walk in your garden, destroy your garden, and go right back under the trash. And all you'll see is the evidence that they was there. So you need to actually have a composting that is off the ground or on a concrete slab. And that must be containerized in order for you to manage it properly.
I do have one. It's in a container, and actually it's in a bin where and I have to physically take a shovel and nip it. So and it's covered completely. But because it's like, I don't know, it takes so long for it to break down.
If you wet it, then you'll have to break down quicker. But I'm telling you this, if your drum is horizontal, or let's say your drum is laying parallel, and you cut an opening in, like a door on the side of the drum, and you put your compost in there, and you can turn it, you can close the door and turn it. Now, there are companies that you can buy a drum from, a composting drum. Right in Florida from AgriVet, you can get a composting drum, and you can just turn it with a, it's almost like a crank. You can just turn it, you can turn your stuff, it'll be real easy. But you being a female, I don't expect you to be trying to go in with a shovel to turn it. It's too difficult. it's too difficult for a male. So you should get a composting drum that was designed for that purpose of, you can just turn it like you're doing a rotisserie. And when you're barbecuing or you're doing some rotisserie and you're turning the chicken on the stick, you can just turn it, and every 6 weeks, the stuff to the bottom should be ready to come out and go into your garden or in pots. Another thing I would like to tell everyone is that the neem plant, when the leaves are dry, you should put that leaf back into the soil because it has a deflecting effect on pathogens in the soil. So if you incorporate it into your garden or into your pots as compost, it will work wonders for you. Nutrients as well as causing insects to move away.
Okay, house plants. With liquid EFM once a week, without, that's over a 6-month period. It's straightforward. Here's another one, Christy Otto from Topeka, Indiana. These are mums with blooming minerals, without blooming minerals. I took this picture 4 weeks after he planted these plants, and Christy told me, Marvin, I could see the difference in 2.5 weeks. Notice the difference on this side with minerals, this side without minerals. Notice there's different variations right here. And one of the funny part about it is I have a hard time finding farmers and people growing greenhouse and flowers. Once they see the difference, I have them a hard time completing that experiment to the end, because as soon as they see the difference, they immediately start applying these minerals on the rest of the product that they said they would do an experiment with. So I'm very fortunate to get some of these pictures. So a lot of people out there using these minerals, as soon as they see the difference, typically in 2.5, 3 weeks, the experiment stops and they're back. Everything gets it. So I don't really get a good picture before and after.
Cora Davy Claire, your question is up next.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to be on your show, Michelle. I appreciate you. I have a question for Mr. Basil Miller. Are the Ministry of Agriculture able to help farmers with a proper irrigation system? And then another question, well, not really a question, it's just a suggestion for the rats. Those who have problems with the rats in the areas, they can mix like 2 tablespoons of cornmeal, regular cornmeal from the food store, and 1 teaspoon of cement. Mix it together well and put it in a plastic bag and put it in the garbage areas. It works wonders. And also to collaborate on what Ms. Selena said about the purslane. The purslane benefits also lowers high cholesterol. Persons with high cholesterol should eat it on a daily basis. It works wonders.
Okay, now you're talking about the irrigation system and helping farmers.
Yes.
Basically, what we are doing right now for Backyard Garden, we are putting together 10,000 kits. This is the largest initiative that the government has ever undertaken. We're putting together 10,000 kits to distribute throughout the Bahamas and through, well, most of it probably be done here in Nassau because that's where most of the population is. And we are going to demonstrate how you set the system up. And then you see how simple it is to set the system up. We will be sending out videos to the various media houses showing how this is done. So you can just look at the video and do likewise, and you'll be able to set up a gravitational drip system for a backyard garden and on a small scale. But you can magnify the scale if you're a big farmer, because we show farmers how to do it also. You can use gravity fed or you can use electricity, but in this COVID-19 age now, we're trying to get people to do it as cheap and efficient as possible by using gravity instead of using electricity. So we do help farmers in that way.
Okay, because I have a 250-gallon drum, right? I do everything in containers in my garden. And plus I have stuff like vertical. Everything is basically in containers. So I just need that connection between that 250-gallon container I have a hose to hook up to it. I bought some fixtures from Tops to get the hose hooked up, so I started it. But I just need to be able to have it running to put like a drip system in the pots. I prefer it to be dripped.
Okay, I have personally designed a 250-gallon container, I know what you're talking about, to actually irrigate my peppers. So I have done that to show people it can be done. So we can help you with that with ease. That's not a problem.
Next up for a question is Renee Anderson.
I have two questions. The first is for Mr. Miller and then Ms. Harbour. Mr. Miller, you mentioned just now about 10,000 kits for backyard farmers. Firstly, how would one go about obtaining one of those kits? And also, does the Department of Agriculture offer any type of seminars or training sessions? I know we're in quarantine now, but outside of this time, does the department offer any type of training?
Well, that has been our routine for years. When we do backyard, we go to the churches, to schools, to various social clubs. We go all over the place. I've been just about everywhere in the Bahamas teaching backyard garden. And since COVID now, we have to do it via video or via Zoom. But we'll be starting that program tomorrow where everything will be captured in video form. So you can look at the whole process and it'll be made available. But that is in the court of others. I'm the technical person that's doing all the work. These people are the other people who are going to do the PR, and I'll be one of the persons giving the example on how things are to be done. So we will be helping everyone by giving everyone a free example on how you can set up a backyard garden system, or you can learn how to manage a garden.
Thanks, Mr. Miller. Now, one of the things, folks, that I am currently working on, because keep in mind that this is the third in a series of webinars, so people have been registering since the very first one, and I'm now in the process of creating a database, a registrant database. And so if you would like to be included in that database, I'm going to type my email address in the comments that you can use to send your information. Well, I'll probably email everyone asking if you wish to be included to just respond to the email with contact information so you can be included in that database. And I would hope that going forward, I will remain in contact with Mr. Miller, who could pass information on that I could just quickly send out to all of the persons who have registered. All right, so I'm gonna ask Leela Greenslade to open your microphone, please. You're up next with a question. Leela Greenslade.
Hello, Michelle, and hello, everyone, and thanks to everyone for the very informative. I had two questions. I think one was answered already about the seaweed. I didn't hear the exact answer to that, but I wanted to know how long do I have to wait before I use the seaweed, because I know that it's salt, and so I wanted to know how long should I wait before I use it in the garden. And then I want to know how to plant cassava and potato. How do I plant cassava and potato? Do I use the actual cassava and potato, or I hear some people say you use the stick? Which part of the stick do I use? How do I go about planting cassava and potato?
Okay, I'll take a stab at that. Potato can be propagated vegetatively, and so can cassava. So cassava, you use the stick. You would use not old sticks, you would use stick that is going through the vegetative growth process of cell division. And so you would get some young sticks and you can stick them and they will develop. You can push them right in the soil, but the soil must be mounded. What I mean by mounded, if the soil is flat and has no depth, you wouldn't get a large cassava. But if you mound the rows, or you mount it, or you can actually stick it in a very large pot, a 25-gallon pot, you can get a very large potato or cassava from that. Sweet potato is so easy to catch. All you need to do is get the vegetative running vine and cut them into 3 nodes and plant them in a tray. And you got yourself potatoes.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, Renee Anderson, you're up next with your question. Please go ahead and unmute your microphone and ask your question, Renee Anderson.
Yes, the other question was from Mrs. Harbour. She talked briefly about the parsley, the or weed type that grows, and I wanted to find out how would you prepare it to consume to consume that parsley.
That's a great question. So as I mentioned, the reason why it's important to include this in our diet is because of the omega-3 fatty acids. Now, those unsaturated fatty acids are destroyed by heat. So ideally, if you would eat it raw. Now, honestly, you see how I've eaten most of the leaves off this already since we've been talking. I have eaten this in salads. So simply, the simplest thing you could do is pick the leaves off or chop up the stems. The tender stems are edible as well. The flowers are edible, just it all. And just throw it into salads. I've made a salad that had like mostly the purslane with tomatoes and onions. So kind of like a Greek style salad, but just added the purslane in it. Another way is to sear it on a high temperature. You lose the benefit of the fatty acids by heating it. But one way that my 8-year-old daughter loves it is I just cut it like stems like this. Looks better in this. And I just heat up a cast iron pan really, really hot until it's like screaming hot, and just put it on there like a couple minutes each side, take it off, maybe a little drizzle of olive oil and salt and pepper, and that's it. But I encourage you to try it raw. The taste is quite mild. Another way you could eat it, get the benefits of it by consuming it raw, is throwing it into your smoothies. The leaves are mucilaginous, a little, they're filled with water, but they have a somewhat slimy consistency, a lot like the Malabar spinach that we grow here. So it'll be great to thicken up a smoothie. So throw it in smoothies, throw it in salads, or sauteed. You could also throw it into soups and stews. But get used to eating this because it grows like a weed, as it is, but it really is high in nutrients.
All right, thank you so much, Salima. Okay, Charlotte Brown, you're up in queue. You're up next in the queue to ask a question. So please go ahead and unmute your microphone, Charlotte Brown.
Good afternoon, Michelle, and thank you. My question is for Mrs. Harbour. How do you prepare the cassava leaves and the sweet potato leaves?
So the cassava leaves do contain small amounts of toxins, so you have to cook them for a minimum of 10 minutes. So I would say by boiling the leaves for about 10 minutes, throwing off the water, and then using that cooked leaf in another dish or eating it like that. Sweet potato leaves, you don't have to treat it so carefully for toxins. But I've done some, I haven't eaten it yet myself, the sweet potato leaves. I'm still doing research to find out different cultures that eat it. Certainly it's eaten in the Philippines. A lot of Southeast Asian countries consume leaves, like sweet potato leaves. Also, another plant that's edible that you probably wouldn't imagine is the shepherd's needle. Needle tips, the young shoots that are tender, those are also edible. So I would say start by doing a simple saute. The oil of your choice, preferably butter or olive oil, but vegetable oils are not on the good list anymore. I like to use a lot of garlic with any of the greens that I prepare. Garlic, onions. Treat it like you would be making steam anything. When you start with that base, you know, you get the benefits of the flavor from all of those things. You put your onions, your sweet peppers, celery, and your tomatoes, and just add the greens to that. In the case of the cassava, you boil the leaves first, throw off the water, and then throw the chopped cassava leaves in the steam gravy.
All right, thank you so much. With regard to the oils, Salim is absolutely right. Vegetable oil in a bottle, you want to stay far from that. Matter of fact, the best thing is butter, not margarine, but butter, and just like she said, slightly saute. You're not going to try to fry anything in butter. As a matter of fact, what we've learned in longevity is that you shouldn't be frying your food at all, because fried food is one of the things that can lead to cancer. And so when you think about what we're doing in the Bahamas, how we try to fry everything, including water, no wonder we have a problem, you know, with cancer of all types. So you want to avoid oils, any oil in a bottle. And the problem, even something that is promoted as healthy, like olive oil, the problem is the oil itself isn't the culprit, but it's the condition of the oil by the time it gets to your table. Because it would have traveled from so far away, it is oxidized by the time it gets to your table. And that oxidation is what is causing the inflammation in your body. So you want to avoid any oil in a bottle. And if you have to cook with butter, but just, you know, lightly saute, you want to not fry your foods. Okay. So, all right. Cheryl H has a question. Cheryl H, can you go ahead and unmute your microphone, please?
Hi, I just wanted to find out I didn't get the name of the plan that the lady just mentioned a few minutes ago before the last question.
Okay, there you go. All right. That's PURSLANE. So if you want to look it up, so you could make sure you're picking the right thing.
Certainly.
I grew up with hearing my Grammy and my mommy call it pusley.
But the proper spelling is PURSLANE, correct? Okay. PURSLANE, so we can make sure we are picking the right thing. I don't want y'all going to pick something and then blaming us when you get sick. All right, no. All right, let's go back to the queue. Santisha Martin, you're up next with your question. Please go ahead and unmute your microphone.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
So I had a question around growing lettuces and things of that nature. I started to grow some lettuce and some romaine lettuce, and I realized that they were growing rather tall than growing, so they were on horizontal versus growing vertical. I looked it up and it said it was bolting or whatever. So I know they mentioned earlier about when you're growing lettuce, I guess they're better to grow in the winter. My question is, can you grow lettuce in the summer in the Bahamas? And then my next question was with potatoes. I know sometimes you would have a potato and you see the little nodes and whatever growing on them. So I've seen videos where you can actually cut it and take it and immerse it in the ground and it should grow from that. Is that so? And can we do that in the Bahamas as well?
Yes, certainly you can grow potatoes from the shoots that are coming from the tubers. You would cut the potato, the shoot off maybe like an inch cube piece, let it sit, let it dry a little bit so you're not putting a freshly cut surface into the soil where it can be attacked by fungi and bacteria and rot. But you can grow potatoes that way. And with respect to the lettuce, yes, the temperatures now, the intensity of the sun is just too much for lettuce. So you have to do it under protection. I am doing a trial right now growing with some of my lettuce varieties under shade. And you probably, if you can't put like a 40% shade over your crop, try to plant it in a place that gets just a couple hours of sun in the morning, but it has shade during the rest of the day. Otherwise, those plants, you really won't be able to get a harvestable yield from the lettuce plants.
Let's go to David Allen. David, please unmute your microphone and ask a question.
Good afternoon.
I wonder if Mr. Basil could tell me, because we have a problem. I'm a registered farmer in Eleuthera. And the problem is, even with getting duty-free stuff from the agriculture license, why does it take so long to obtain, to get the necessary documents to get the stuff duty-free? Because the other day, it took one of my friends about 8 months before they were able to get any type of satisfaction from the ministry. So could you speak on that first, please? Well, I could try and answer your question, but I've never worked in administration or in the office. I've always been out at GRAC in the field. So what they do down there and the whole process of what they do, I'm not too familiar with, but I do know the general overtones. That what you're talking about shouldn't happen. It shouldn't take that long. That's not a long process. I don't know why, but I'll find out why, and I'm probably let you know.
Michelle, I can help you out with that. You have to also find out the process in which he's trying to apply for the agricultural duty-free, because most often if you're trying to go through agriculture have to go to finance. So if you're trying to do it from Eleuthera or Zuma, where you at, it's best if you send your email straight to Mr. Whitney Kenny from finance with your agricultural permit, and he could give you your stamp right away. Mr. Whitney Kenny is very efficient inside that. And once you have your agricultural permit, along with what you're trying to do, he'll get that fast forwarded to you right away. Going to a third party is usually what delays certain things.
All right, thank you, Gerard. All right, Sherilyn Albury is back. So let's get your question in, Sherilyn. Just go ahead and unmute your microphone, please.
Is it C. porcelain that they're talking about? Is it C. porcelain?
Let's let them answer. Salima?
So it is, I was not talking about sea purslane. I was talking about the one that's commonly found on land, but sea purslane is also edible. I've actually made a salad with sea purslane, and it's really good because it is already salty. So yes, you can eat sea purslane as well.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? I want to play one more video. I see you, Cora. Let me just play this one more video, and then we're going to get to your question, Cora. Also, for those of you who are interested, I have put in the chat, I'm offering to everyone for being a part of this webinar a free health assessment where you can actually fill out just a couple of questions online to determine where you are at from a health perspective and whether or not you have a mineral deficiency. So you can check in the chat for that information for a free health assessment as my way of saying thank you for being a part of this webinar today. So we're going to play one more quick video.
We are here in Southern California, North County, San Diego County, and what you're looking at here is a small portion of Rodney's Ranch. Rodney's Ranch has been using Dr. Wallach's liquid blooming minerals and the liquid EFM for the last 4 or 5 years. As you see behind me, we've got peas right here. Up here on the hillside, we have got all different types of vegetables. There's 15.5 acres of vegetables that Rodney's Ranch will produce for the local farmers market. One of the things I want to kind of show you is that you will not see too many, if any, other produce farmers in the area with these black plastic fence around their produce patch. As you can see in the background here, you've got these black, about 3 foot high plastic fence. And that is to keep the rabbits out. The rabbits and squirrels, once you introduce a good mineral-rich supplement into your fertilizer program, like the liquid EFM, it increases the sugar level of the plant. The sugar level of the plant attracts animals. Animals have a sugar craving just like you and I do, and guess what they'll do? They love those carrots. Those rabbits do. They love the greens, and one of the things you'll notice as we'll take a little tour of Rodney's Ranch here in Vista, California, Southern California here, you're going to notice there's very little sign of infestation, very little sign of bug damage, and that is because of high sugar bricks. The higher the sugar bricks we have in a plant, the less infestation, and that's accomplished only with minerals. You cannot do that with fertilizer. So I'm proud to present to you Rodney's Ranch. What we have here is just a really nice, healthy crop of beets. And now these are not quite ready to harvest yet, but I'm just going to give you kind of an idea. Look here, look at the leaves. The leaves are just brilliant, nice deep color here. How bright red that is. Of course, that's not quite developed yet, but this is because of minerals. Minerals, and another thing too is a lot of people, see how that snaps? Vegetables high in bricks, you see have more of a snapping, like the carrots snap more, the green beans snap more. Look at that, it just, bingo. How crisp that is. That's because this plant is very rich in minerals, because Rodney is feeding these plants, the beets here, he's feeding them liquid EFM. He's doing it once a week. And to see a healthy, and these will get about another, probably another, not this big around, if not more than that. So, not ready to harvest, but look at these leaves, how healthy those leaves are. Very healthy. You don't see hardly any infestation on there. Actually, I see one tiny little, maybe one tiny little bug hole there, but there's very little of any infestation on these plants, and that's a direct result of the liquid EFM. He raises a lot of carrots, and I see people come to his booth, and they come there specifically to buy his carrots. These carrots, obviously these are not quite ready to harvest, but as you can see, a nice little carrot here and a nice plant. These carrots will, they're probably about half from being mature. You bite into them and you just never tasted a carrot unlike any other carrot. They're sweet. Once again, watch that carrot, snaps. See how that thing snaps? Nice and fresh. Nice and fresh carrots. And one of the greatest testimonies I always, Rodney's clients, they say, you know, we like Rodney's fruits and vegetables. We like Rodney's vegetables because they're fresh. They look so fresh. They don't know that these plants here are nutrient dense. In other words, they have a nutritionally enhanced with minerals. They don't know that. But they just know they taste better and they stay fresh a lot longer. And that's the benefit of the liquid EFM when applied properly to your existing fertilizer program. And as you can see, very healthy plant. Notice the root mass. That's a pretty nice root mass. And one of the things that we see very common, your plants that have got a lot of, I don't know if you can see that or not, but plants that have a nutritionally enhanced with minerals have a much greater root mass. Therefore, it allows them to take up more minerals from the soil and also make them more drought tolerant. It's very important to understand this simple concept, especially if you are in an area where you have irrigation as your main source of water. Drought-tolerant plants are highly sought after by these farmers, and that's something you can help these farmers save money on their water bill by teaching them how to add a little bit of the liquid EFM to increase the root mass of the plant, which naturally does that because the liquid EFM, what it does, is specifically designed to enhance the genetic potential of that plant. That genetic potential is limited to the nutrients that's leaching in the soil. Now, when we spray or feed these plants with the liquid EFM, what we're doing is we're giving it all the 70 known minerals that exist in the crust of the earth. It's called the law of minimums. Now, that plant does not know that those minerals are not all in the crust of the earth. It just knows it has those minerals once a week or every other week or whatever you choose to for your liquid EFM application. It just knows that it has met that simple requirement. All the nutrients are there. Therefore, I can now get all the nutrients out of this soil. This soil here is nutritionally deficient in a lot of minerals. But there is some major trace minerals in there that a plant will benefit from, and now it can go after those minerals more efficiently and get more out of what's in the soil. And that's how simple the concept is of using the liquid EFM. Gives you an idea just how healthy this plant is. Now here's a part of a broccoli head that hasn't been harvested yet, but they'll come through and they harvest what is ready. But I've never seen broccoli plants this big. I mean, this is just very healthy plants, and it is hard to find leaves that have not been bothered with bugs. I have been, probably the last hour, I've been just walking through different vegetable patches here at Rodney's Ranch, and I have yet to actually find a bug. Once in a while I might find a little hole here and there, which would indicate a bug started to eat, but you don't see continual. If that bug was able to continue to digest that plant, you would see more works of his infestation on that leaf. But see, once they get a taste of this stuff, high sugar bricks, bugs can't metabolize high sugar bricks because they don't have a pancreas. Now, ideally, we would like to be able to, the liquid EFM, we would like to be able to foliar feed it. And that's basically a spray. And what you want to do is these young leaves right here, they metabolize those negative charged plant-derived minerals that consist of that liquid EFM and those enzymes. So Rodney, he actually chose a different method, and there's more than one method you can apply the liquid EFM. And he chose to go through his irrigation system, his drip system. If you look here behind me, we've got the main tube of water coming in, and of course here's his drip system. Here's his irrigation little tube, and that's where the mineral-rich water comes through. It waters these plants. And he does that once a week. Now, he adds that liquid EFM to his existing fertilizer programs. And so for irrigation systems, pivots, large pivots, this is just a small scale of irrigation that we can use to deliver the liquid EFM to the roots of the plant. Ideally, foliar application, that would be the preferred method, and you do it before the heat of the day. You want as much sunlight on that plant after you apply the liquid EFM. And why is that? It's because of the photosynthesis. The photosynthesis helps that plant metabolize and stimulates that plant's ability to metabolize more nutrients from the soil. And that's the whole objective of the liquid EFM, is give the plant all the 70 known minerals it needs to maximize its genetic potential.
Cora McPhee, you're up next.
Yes, I would like to direct this to Mr. Miller. With the peat moss and the ProMix, if you're traying your seeds, can you use either one of them, or do you have to use the ProMix?
Well, I prefer ProMix because its ability to retain water.
Okay.
It doesn't dry out that quickly, so you'll water it every 3 days. Another thing I want to add is that the depth in which you plant the seed will determine your percentage germination. If you plant the seed in a tray, a cell tray, if you plant it too deep, 9 times out of 10 it might never get to the surface. So you should plant it 1/4 of an inch below the surface, very shallow.
Okay, if you have some peat moss, can you add that? Let's say if you're making a bed, a bed to put down some plants, can you add that peat moss to your soil?
Yes, you can. Give your soil some added structure, body, and some physical properties, as well as mineral properties that is in the peat moss. Your soil will have good insulation against getting dry out too quickly from the sun. All of those benefits.
Okay, so you will say don't start the seeds with the peat moss.
Relatively.
We couldn't find ProMix the other day, so I got some peat moss, right?
You couldn't find ProMix?
Yeah, I couldn't find the ProMix. They didn't have any up at the shop, you know, the agriculture shop.
And store?
No one had it, so I got the peat moss, and I did soak it, you know, sort of. But you're recommending that the ProMix is better to start.
Or potting soil.
Oh, yeah, okay, I can start the seed with potting soil.
Yeah,
oh, that's the potting soil mix.
Yeah.
Okay, and then if I'm making the bed, I can also put the garden soil like on the top of my beds.
Yeah, if you're making the bed, because if you're growing vegetables, you probably need about 6 inches of soil depth. Now, if you're going to grow some root crops, you need more depth. But if you're just going to grow vegetables, you need about 6 inches of soil.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'll get in contact with you when Mrs. Malcolm send out your contact. I'll call you. I do backyard and I have a little farm. Okay, so I'll call you when she
Okay.
sends out your information. Thank you.
Yeah, when it comes to starting the seeds in the seed trays, one trick that I like to do that gives me about 80 to 90% germination. You take the seed trays, you fill them up with soil, and you use one seed tray, and you press it down on top of the other.
Marion, let's go. Let's hear from you, please. Go ahead and unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Glad to be a part of this webinar. Thanks,
Thank
Michelle.
you for being here.
And thanks for all the presenters. Now, I wanted to find out, I think I came on late, so I'm thinking that when I came on, I heard some of my questions were being answered. But I wanted to ask this question. The 6-inch soil depth, how would you know it's 6 inches? How do you measure it?
Good question.
And then I also wanted to ask, I got some horse manure. Is that a good thing? Or, should I use it? Or, well, I started to use it anyway, but I'm hoping that it's good. But that's my 2 questions for now.
Thank you. Mr. Miller or Salima, either one.
Let me take a stab at it first. And when it comes to manures, the best manure that we have found is chicken manure, because a chicken has a single stomach. So whatever he eats, and he lets out most of the nutrients rather than holding it in. But when you're talking about horse, cow, there's good for other properties rather than the minerals availability or the fertility availability. So I don't see them being that fertile, but they will help. But if you really want to get some good manure for your garden, try to get some chicken manure.
Okay. And the 6-inch in depth, how would I know? How would I measure that?
Well, you simply can actually push a stick in the soil down to the depth of the soil and then measure it. It's a simple method.
Okay. Thank you.
Cohen has a question, so it'll be the last question of the day. Cohen, go ahead. Unmute your microphone, please.
Good day, everybody. Thanks for being here once again. Just a quick question to the farmers. Any recommendation as far as someone wanting to grow turmeric?
Did we lose him?
No, I'm waiting on that.
Oh, okay. That was just a quick question. All right, turmeric. What advice do you have for somebody who wants to grow turmeric?
Turmeric requires fertile, well-draining soils and shade. So you cannot grow it successfully in direct sun. It needs to be shaded. can't recall the exact percentage shade, but it's a crop that needs shade.
Okay. Colin, does that answer your question, or did you want to know something else?
It's a start. It's helpful. How is it as far as water? Because I know it's also a highly absorbing.
Turmeric is a tropical plant, so it does require what family is it? The same family as ginger.
Ginger, right?
Gingeraceae. I think it does require relatively a lot, not as much as say the bananas, but certainly it does require more water than most crops. But I think in our research, when looking at growing turmeric, the key factor that was limiting here for growing it commercially here in the Bahamas was the light intensity and being able to shade a whole field. So if you have, what you could do, if you have an area with a number of trees that could provide filtered light, in lieu of erecting shade over your beds, plant it in an area that has a number of trees that could filter the sunlight, and then you could make raised beds. I would say no shallower than 6 inches. Go for 8 inches minimum, and to plant your rhizomes in.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, that's going to do it for this webinar for today. I would like to say a sincere thank you to our presenters, Basil Miller, Salima Harbour, and Gerard Dowell. I really appreciate you being here today. Next week, we're going to be talking about technology, how to incorporate technology in farming. And then the week after that, we're going to be talking about livestock farming. And I've been getting a lot of requests to continue these beyond the lockdown. So the response has been really very encouraging, and who knows, I ain't like I got nothing else to do. So maybe we will continue the conversation beyond the lockdown. But for now, when we first started this, the idea was to keep us, give us something to do during the lockdown. We just may go beyond. But for now, thank you so much, and everybody just have a great afternoon and stay safe. Thank you for being here.